Unmasking the ill intentions, the self-serving choices of developed nations and the urgency for climate justice. Allow me to introduce myself, for I am Dr. Asher, a climate connoisseur extraordinaire, and people ask me a question about climate change. The question of why these climate crises occur is not the real challenge at hand, as we already have the answer. The important question that must be addressed is why developing countries bear an unjustly disproportionate burden of the devastating consequences brought about by climate change, including floods, droughts, cyclones, heat waves, food scarcity, water scarcity, access to quality education, and diminished living standards. This stark reality has ignited a deep sense of urgency within me. It is truly disheartening to witness the immense challenges faced by nations in Asia, including Vietnam, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, the Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, and Myanmar, as well as African countries like Sudan, Kenya, Mozambique, Ethiopia, and Nigeria. Additionally, the marginalized and vulnerable communities of South America are also grappling with the impacts. These countries and communities are unjustly burdened by the repercussions of climate change, despite having minimal historical responsibility for the ecological imbalance that currently plagues our natural climate. The countless catastrophic events triggered by climate change, such as cyclones, relentless heat waves, widespread floods, food scarcity, water scarcity, as well as compromised access to quality education and diminished living standards, have compelled me to deliver this urgent message. It is crucial that we recognize the urgency of the situation and take immediate action to address these pressing issues. In a world grappling with numerous challenges, there is one adversary that looms larger than any political game: climate change. Beyond the realm of politics, it is crucial to recognize the profound consequences of climate change. The choices made by developed nations, driven by self-interest, have become the catalyst for perpetuating this crisis. They reflect ill intentions towards developing countries, subjecting vulnerable and marginalized communities to a fate akin to eternal servitude. It is high time we unveil these inconvenient truths and demand real change. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to share some profound insights with you. Climate change is a global menace. Climate change knows no boundaries, indiscriminately affecting every corner of our planet. Its impact on vulnerable communities and delicate ecosystems is nothing short of catastrophic. Natural disasters, food insecurity, and widening socioeconomic disparities are among its grim consequences. Climate change goes beyond political rhetoric. It demands immediate global cooperation and resolute action. The self-serving choices of developed nations. The crisis we face today is the direct result of self-serving choices made by developed nations. Their pursuit of industrialization, unchecked consumption of fossil fuels, and unsustainable practices have caused an alarming surge in greenhouse gas emissions. As a consequence, global warming and climate disruptions have become the new norm. The burden of this crisis falls disproportionately on developing nations, who are left to bear the brunt of its impact. Ill intentions and inequitable treatment. The pernicious effects of climate change shed light on a disheartening reality: ill intentions and inequitable treatment. Vulnerable nations find themselves at the forefront of rising sea levels, intensified extreme weather events, and agricultural upheaval. Their resources are continuously exploited, and their well-being disregarded. This perpetuates a cycle of dependence, thrusting developing countries into a state of perpetual disadvantage. It is an embodiment of systemic injustice that robs them of agency and stifles progress. Now, my friends, the time has come for us to redefine our priorities and shift our focus towards building a more sustainable future. It is imperative that we reevaluate our values and choices, and unite as a global community to address the urgent need for climate justice and equity. Allow me to emphasize the significance of this matter. Confronting the colossal challenges of climate change necessitates a seismic shift in priorities. We must demand climate justice, compelling developed nations to assume greater responsibility for their historical contributions. Policies, investments, and initiatives should be reevaluated to prioritize the well-being of both people and the planet. Equity and fairness must underpin our approach, forging a path towards a sustainable and inclusive world. Climate justice is the principle that seeks to address the inequitable distribution of the impacts of climate change and ensure that vulnerable communities are not disproportionately affected. It recognizes that the burden of climate change falls most heavily on those who have contributed the least to its causes, primarily developing nations and marginalized communities within them. Climate justice calls for fair and equitable solutions that consider historical responsibility, human rights, and the well-being of all people. Let me emphasize the seriousness and urgency of the matter. The imperative for climate reparation arises from the historical and ongoing contributions of developed nations to greenhouse gas emissions and the resulting climate crisis. These countries, through their industrialization and unsustainable practices, have disproportionately contributed to global warming. Climate reparation recognizes that they have a moral and ethical obligation to take responsibility for their actions and assist developing nations in adapting to and mitigating the impacts of climate change. Reparation involves providing financial resources, technology transfer, capacity building, and other forms of support to vulnerable countries and communities. It aims to rectify the systemic injustices that have perpetuated the cycle of dependence and disadvantage. Climate reparation is not a gesture of sympathy but a recognition of the responsibility to rectify historical and ongoing harms. By embracing climate reparation, developed nations can contribute to the restoration of justice, create opportunities for sustainable development, and help build climate resilience in vulnerable regions. This transformative action is crucial for achieving a more just and sustainable world, where the impacts of climate change are mitigated, and vulnerable communities are empowered to adapt and thrive. In the pursuit of climate justice and the need for climate reparation, a collective effort is required. International cooperation, accountability mechanisms, and strong commitments from developed nations are essential to ensure that the necessary support reaches those most affected. Only through genuine action and a commitment to equity can we forge a future that is fair, sustainable, and just for all. Acknowledging that climate change, rather than politics, is our true enemy is crucial. The self-serving choices of developed nations perpetuate this crisis, reflecting ill intentions toward developing countries and treating them as eternal slaves. Let us cast aside the veil of political discourse and confront the true enemy of our time, climate change. The self-serving choices of developed nations have fueled this crisis and perpetuated a cycle of inequity, leaving developing countries languishing. We are bound by a collective responsibility to demand real change and to stand up for climate justice. It is a clarion call for influential leaders across the globe to transcend empty words and hollow conferences. Reparation must be made, not in sympathy, but in true action. Together, we can forge a future where climate change is curbed, vulnerable communities are safeguarded, and a sustainable and just world is realized. Don't forget that with every action, we shape the future. With every passing year, we hold the key to saving our Earth's destiny. Friends, join us on an exhilarating journey as we delve into the captivating world of climate change. I am Dr. Asher, your trusted climate connoisseur, here to quench your thirst for knowledge. People far and wide flock to me, seeking answers to their burning questions about the ever-changing climate. But wait, there's more. To stay in the loop with the latest updates and insights, make sure to follow, comment, and share our enthralling videos. Together, we can spread awareness and make a real impact. Join our community today and let's embark on this adventure of discovery.